So this month we are focusing on the theme of unity. So for 2023, we decided to create a year-long theme of building a community as we were actively engaged in physically constructing our new facility, which hopefully last week of October, first week of November is what we're shooting for right now as our opening date. So we'll keep you posted as that develops. But it is looking like it feels good to go into the building and see. I went in there this weekend. It was, we'd been painted and we had doors. And so it was really exciting. And we had the grid for the ceiling. Those were the new things that had happened for us throughout the week. So, and I've been making progress on getting the labyrinth organized. And so that's going to be a reality soon too. So we're so excited about all of that. So unity is one of the 12 attributes of the divine. In our philosophy, we believe there are at least 12, but 12 of them that we think about most often. And unity is one of those. Unity, according to our founder, Ernest Holmes, in the definition of it from his New Thought Dictionary, unity is the oneness of all life, our inseparable union with nature, with the Christ consciousness, and with God. This inseparable nature of inseparable union of everything that we are, everything in nature, everything about consciousness, and everything about the divine is all interconnected into this unity. Now, in most of his books, somewhere along the line, he says something along the lines of, unity is not uniformity. So when we're talking about unity, we don't mean sameness. There is great diversity in unity. And so that diversity has led to lots of different conflicts that have happened in our world. And so today I want to talk about how we can come together from this point of view of unity to begin to have a better experience of life with other people in our world, other animals, other creatures, other things in our world. So my talk title today is One Heart, One Purpose. And this comes from two quotes from two of my favorite authors. The first quote is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Now, Emerson is the person who launched Ernest Holmes, our founder, on his pathway to exploring these ideas. Ernest Holmes was brought up in a Christian family. In fact, he's named after the Christian minister that his mother loved. And when he read Emerson, he said it was like drinking water after a long thirst. It really quenched his soul to read Emerson. So this quote comes from Emerson's essay called The Oversoul. The heart in thee, the heart in thee is the heart of all. Not a valve, not a wall, not an intersection is there anywhere in nature. But one blood rolls uninterruptedly in an endless circulation through all of life, as the water of the globe is all one sea. I thought what a beautiful image that is, this one heart that is pumping the blood, that is the same blood inside of me, that's inside of you, that's inside of the animals, that's inside of the trees, that same life force, that same energy, that same essence that is moving itself through and manifesting itself in and through each one of us. That one heart. We are all united in that one heart. The second part, the purpose part, comes from Ernest himself. I've been fascinated with a book I recently discovered. Earlier this year I discovered it, based on Ernest Holmes' radio shows and TV shows that he did in the 50s. And it's called The Power of This Thing Called Life. And in there he says, the great lesson that life is trying to teach us is that we are all rooted in God. But each person is an individualized center of divine being. We have what Emerson calls unity at the center and variety at the circumference. But unity does not mean uniformity. Unity means a oneness of purpose. Unity means that what is best and safe for the majority, without the sight of each member of that majority and each location in it. In other words, we each have this one purpose that we are moving forward through. And that one purpose now is going to show up uniquely in each one of us. But that one purpose is the fulfillment of life. It is being that place through which God shows up, in which we allow that divine essence to express itself perfectly and uniquely just as we are. That is our one purpose, to be the place where God shows up. and to be it the best way that we can. And we are all unified in that purpose. So one heart, one blood, one valve, one organ that is pumping itself through all life. One purpose, to be the place through which the divine shows up in expression right here and right now. That's really why we come here. That's what really our purpose is. And we each get to choose how we show up. We each get to choose how that we express that purpose. And the more that we align ourselves with the authentic expression of that, the greater the experience is that we're going to have. Now, as I said earlier, there's this diversity in the world. And this diversity has created lots of challenges in our society in lots of different ways throughout all of history. You can go back any time that there's any note of history around there, and you're going to see conflict happening in there. Because oftentimes, we get caught up in our little egoic mind that says it has to be this way. I'm right, they're wrong. And so we then act out from that point of view. But if we acted out from that purpose, that universal purpose that we've all come here from, if we act out as, I am the place where the divine shows up, and I'm going to allow it to show up beautifully and perfectly as me. Imagine what a world we could create. You know, our vision is creating a world that works for everyone in all of creation. If we were all living our purpose, if we were all in our divine footstep that takes us to that path of unfoldment as our authentic self, imagine the world that we could begin to create. What a joy, what a pleasure that would be. Unfortunately, most often we find our experience of unity during times of trials, during times when there's been conflict, when things have happened that have been devastating. I think back, in my recent memory, I think back to 9/11 and how the country came together. Gosh, that's tomorrow. 22 years. How we came together as one after the horrific events of that. You think about Hurricane Katrina. I had family that was living in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, and they told me the stories of how the community came together. People that had been at each other's throats prior to that hurricane hitting were then helping each other out. And not only did it stay in the New Orleans area, but it moved out into the rest of the country. My family happened to move back to Indiana, where we were from, and they were overwhelmed by the generosity of the people who came to their aid to help them replace their household goods and everything that had been lost. They were totally taken care of. Someone arranged for them to have a place to live. People from my other aunt's church were bringing in food and all kinds of household goods just so that they could, have a comfortable life there. Just this generosity of spirit that comes through when we have these trials and hardships that happen to us. 6 years ago, just about, here in Las Vegas, we experienced a very tragic event. In fact, the most tragic mass shooting in the United States. 58 people lost their lives on October 1st, 2017. And this community rallied. And it is continuing to rally around that idea. I was just reading in the RJ that on September 4th, the county commission voted on the official permanent memorial for the victims of the Route 91 shooting in Las Vegas. It's going to be 58 columns of light that represent candles for each of the victims of the mass shooting. It's still going on. We're still rallying around that. How many times do you drive by and you see a Vegas Strong bumper on the back of somebody's car? People are still holding on to that unified consciousness, that tragedy that brought us together in a way that we had not been together before. That's what unity can do for us. That's what it can do to allow us to live that full expression of our authentic purpose in life. There have been many heroes throughout the world that have found their purpose and lived it. And as I was reading through some of the stories, the thing that came to me stronger than anything else was to really believe in unity, to really practice the principles that demonstrate we believe in unity, takes a tremendous amount of courage. It takes courage to break away from the group that we are in and say, this is not right, and I I need to be stepping forward to bring this into a better expression, a greater expression in the world. Something is not happening here. The purpose of life, this unified purpose of life, is not being expressed fully when people are being subjected to mistreatment, to prejudice, to segregation, to any of the violence that happens against people. And so as I was thinking about this, I thought of course, Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, big world leaders who worked so tirelessly, who risked their life, who lost their life in pursuit of unity, in pursuit of living their purpose to make this world that works for everyone in all of creation. They did this work through nonviolence. They said, there is no way I am going to engage in the same activity that has been done unto me. I will not do that. That is not my purpose in life. My purpose is to be the example of how to move forward in change without being violent about it. I think of people like Mother Teresa, who gave her entire life to help orphans on the streets of India, Calcutta, and the wonderful work that she did there. Her famous quote, "I am but a pencil, writing a love note in the hand of God." Giving her love to the world as only she could do, living her authentic purpose and her passion. One of the more modern day heroes that I love reading about is, see if I can get her name right, Malala Yousafzai, who as a Pakistani girl was on a bus heading to school in Pakistan during the reign of the Taliban. She was pulled off the bus, and when she argued with her people that were against her, they shot her in the face. And she survived. She is now a worldwide advocate for education of young girls throughout the continent, throughout the globe, throughout everywhere. Courage. Could you imagine the courage of a 13-year-old girl to stand up to somebody with a gun in her face and saying, I am going to go to school? Imagine the courage that took. And then to continue to do it every day, knowing that she faced that same possible outcome again, and even worse. Amazing people. One of my favorite movies is Schindler's List. Oskar Schindler, a German industrialist who saved thousands of Jews during the Holocaust. He gave them jobs so the Germans would see them as valuable, necessary, and spare their lives. He arranged for documentation for thousands of other Jews to leave the country. What an amazing person. Can you imagine the courage it took for that man to do that in Nazi Germany? They would as soon shoot him as anything else. Courage. It takes courage to live a unified purpose. It takes courage to open our hearts, that one heart, to everyone else around us. And there are ways that we can begin to do this in not as drastic ways as the people I've just described. But we could begin to communicate with people a little differently. We have something called nonviolent communication. We have active listening. We have ways that we can begin to open ourselves up to hear other people's stories, to hear their experience of things. It's so easy to go through life and thinking, well, this is how I experience it, so everybody else around me must experience it the same way too. Sometimes it takes us just to be willing to be around someone who's a little bit different than us, to see what their experience is. This summer I spent a week with teenagers. I don't spend a lot of time with teenagers. I spent a week with teenagers. I had a ball. I was so amazed at these young people not only the stories that they told about the things that they had been through in their lives, again, amazing courage to move through that, but the consciousness that was present, the advanced consciousness. I'm thinking, well, these guys, they're more advanced than most of the foundation classes I teach. This is pretty good. I'm really impressed here. You know, it was really exciting to be around that, thinking, this is the future of our world. How impressive it was for me to do that, to be around all of these beautiful young people, to listen to them, to speak with them, to hear their stories, to witness them in the way that they are expressing themselves, to set aside all of my judgment. We had a lot of teenage music. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. They actually pulled me up to dance. But I did. I danced with them, so it was great. It was great to be around someone different than myself for a while. And so often we are in our own little closed-in niches, and we just stay there and we don't venture out. But one of the best ways that we can begin to experience this unified purpose, this unity of heart and soul and life, is to venture outside of our little closed-in circles and to see what's available to us in the world out there. Another thing that we can begin to do is to remember the principle of truth. Remember truth in every situation. Now, when I'm talking about truth here, I'm not talking about my truth versus their truth, or my truth, I'm right, they're wrong. I am talking about truth as those universal principles. Truth that there is unity, that there is beauty and abundance and love and grace that is moving through every single person in this world, showing up uniquely as that individual. But that truth is there. And so when I remember truth, universal truth, as opposed to my personal preferences as truth, then I can have a different experience of the people that I'm encountering in my world. So remembering truth as a universal principle is a way to develop a greater sense of unity. Keeping an open heart. So often we are in situations where we are having a reaction to it. And when we have a reaction to that situation that is negative or not pleasurable, we have a tendency to close down, to try to avoid it. We don't want anything to do with it. And so we close our hearts down. If we are closing our hearts down, we are disconnecting ourselves from that one heart, that universal heart, that one divine presence. And we're not living our purpose. We are isolating ourselves and becoming more segregated and focusing more on the diverse nature of life as opposed to the unified nature of life. And so keeping our heart open when we face different situations. There are lots of ways of doing this. I tend to just take a breath. That works for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but when I get into a tough situation, I stop and breathe, because when I stop and breathe, it reminds me of some spiritual truth. I connect with myself, my higher self inside when I go in and breathe a little bit, and it allows me to not have that instantaneous closing off that often happens when we experience things like that. So keeping an open heart. The other thing we can do is we can think and speak and listen generously. By that I mean to give people the benefit of the doubt. When someone is speaking about something that they are passionate about, or maybe they are upset about, instead of me reacting to it, I can listen with a generous spirit, keeping my heart open, and listen to hear what it is they need to say. I was recently watching an interview with a counselor, and they had been a bartender before going into their profession. As they were going through school, they'd been a bartender. And they said what they realized, that through bartending and through counseling both, was it wasn't anything that they had to offer to the person. It wasn't any advice or any practice or any skill that they had to offer. The people just needed a place to be heard. It didn't matter whether it was sitting at a bar or sitting on the couch in their office. The people just needed to be heard. So often we don't take the time to listen to people. Again, we engage in that reactionary place within us, closing down our hearts, closing down our ears, and not being that place where love and generosity and compassion can be experienced in the world. And so taking that opportunity to listen and to think, and then to also speak generously. Instead of trying to give somebody advice, say, that must be really hard. That must be a hard experience for you. It sounds difficult to me. See, I'm not trying to fix anybody when I say that. I'm just giving the person a place to be heard. And often, that's all that's necessary. We often say that when we take one step towards God, God takes 1,000 steps towards us. Being a place where somebody can be heard is allowing those 1,000 steps to move forward. You're being that place where Spirit is listening. And when somebody reaches out like that towards you, you're giving them a place for them to connect with the divine. And you don't have to do anything else. Keeping our hearts open, keeping our minds open, keeping our ears open, and being that place of generosity, of love and compassion, of empathy, is a way that we can begin to experience a more unified world. The master teacher, Jesus, said that there were 2 great commandments: to love God and to love thy neighbor as thyself. When we are doing that, when we are engaged in that, that means that we see God in everything and everyone. We include each person, each thing in that one divine unity. And who is our neighbor? Well, it's everyone else around us. The 2 greatest commandments both have to do with love. And unity is not possible without love, without being that place where the divine has a place to operate in our world. So I printed out some ways that we can begin to practically experience unity, practicing unity in our world. And I've covered a little bit of this, but the whole thing about communication and listening is very key to it. And reacting to people nonviolently. Instead of getting allowing whatever they've said to touch on some experience that we've had that makes us react in a way that is not so positive, begin to shut that off and allow that person to have a place to express themselves openly and authentically. You don't have to agree with them, but not reacting to that in a negative way gives the person a place to even hear themselves. And sometimes when we say something like that and we hear ourselves say it, we have a shift in consciousness right then. Because we recognize things that aren't true too, even if they're coming out of our own mouths. Having shared goals and visions and values is a way that we can build unity. Here at Centers for Spiritual Living, we talk about our shared values. Being open and loving and inclusive is a value. Practicing these principles and living these truths is a value. Creating that world that works for everyone in all of creation. That's our vision. And the practices that we do lead toward the fulfillment of that vision. Talking about our shared experiences is a powerful way to build unity. When we are in a group, oftentimes it may not be exactly the same thing, but it's exactly the same feeling. people have experienced that feeling in one way or another. And when we talk about that, when we can be in that open dialogue, that open communication with each other, then it gives us a place to hear from somebody else's point of view and experience that emotion with them. To collaborate on things, to work together, is a wonderful way to build unity. Most of you have been in the workplace, and you work together with people in your office or your organization to collaborate, to make something happen. We begin to see each other in a different light when we work together collaboratively. And we begin to experience a greater sense of unity with that. We certainly begin to experience a greater unified purpose when we are collaborating on projects together. And so these are just a few ways that we can begin to build that sense of unity within ourselves. And so, as I say, I like to find practical ways to use this stuff. So, as I was working with this week's talk, I was thinking about what we could do for this. And I know that oftentimes we are in some kind of a conflict experience in our life. Sometimes it's minor. Sometimes it's, one of those lifelong experiences. But I want you to, if you will, with me, just to take a moment. We're going to go into a contemplation here about some situation that we have in our lives right now and how we can then move through it in a greater way to experience a more unified sense of heart and purpose here. So if you would, just go ahead and close your eyes. And just begin to bring to mind any kind of a challenge that you may be experiencing right now. It could be with someone else. It could be within your own self. It could be a very small, very minor challenge. It could be something that is life-changing. It is unique to each one of us. So just begin to bring to mind some challenge right now. And as you contemplate this challenge, ask yourself, where am I seeing anything other than unity? Where am I seeing any person as not part of this situation or part of me? Where am I seeing diversity instead of oneness? Where am I seeing separation? And now, what spiritual principle, what truth is applicable to this situation? If I'm in conflict with someone, some particular one, a spiritual truth may be there is only love. If it has to do with finances, a spiritual truth may be I live in a world filled with abundance. If it is a health challenge, I am the personification of wholeness. And every cell of my body is perfect right now. See if you can remember a spiritual truth that applies to this conflict. Now just take in a nice deep breath. And as you do so, feel your heart space opening. And as you breathe out, just allow some room in there for the heart to remain open. In this conflict area of your life, just allow your heart to remain open. Do that a couple more times. Breathe in nice and deep. Open up the heart. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. Now, as you move around through your week and the months to come, if this conflict comes back to your mind, breathe into it. Remember that experience of the open heart, of the full heart space inside of you. Remember those spiritual truths about the situation. It's a practice. It doesn't usually happen overnight. It can, but sometimes it takes repeated effort, repeated use of this technique to bring about a permanent change in your experience of it. But it's always available to you. That's what I love about our breath. We've always got it. All right, let's take this into prayer. So I'll have the licensed practitioners stand and surround us. And so for those of you that may be new, our form of prayer is called affirmative prayer. We call it spiritual mind treatment. It is 5 stages. First stage, I recognize the presence of the divine. In the second stage, I know that we are one with it. We unify with that presence. In the third stage, we speak that spiritual truth. In the fourth stage, we give thanks because gratitude's always good. And in the last one, we let it go, knowing it is done. And so if you would, just turn within. I like to pray with my eyes closed. If that works for you, that's perfect too. And so right here and right now, I know that there is only one. I know that there is only this one power, this one presence, this one creative love intelligence, this one unified force that is moving itself in, through, and as each one of us. I know that one force, that one power, that one presence is unconditional love. It is perfect peace. It is wisdom and clarity. It is balance and harmony. I know that nothing exists outside of this one, for it is the isness, the allness, and the fullness of life. And so knowing this, I know that I am one with it. That all that I am is a presentation of that one, showing up uniquely, perfectly, authentically, as the presence of the divine. And as I know this is true for me, I know this is true for each one. Everyone here, everyone that hears my voice, everyone that has ever been and that it will ever be. Because nothing exists outside of this one. And so knowing this truth, I speak my word. I know that right here and right now, there is a presence and a power of love that is moving itself into expression as this beloved community. I know that it is in the hearts and the minds of each person here. I know that we are the hands and the feet of the divine. That each one of us is that pencil in the loving hands of God, writing a love letter to the world. That is our unique purpose. That is why we are here. To be that very place where God shows up. The place on which we stand is holy ground, for the presence of God is right there. In all of its magnificence, in all of its glory, in perfection and wholeness. No matter where it is we stand, we bring that presence with us. And that is our great honor and our privilege. It is our purpose. One heart, one purpose, one life. I am so grateful to know this. I'm so grateful to feel it. I'm so grateful to see it operating in this community and beyond. For I know that wherever we go, we bring God with us. And we are a blessing and a benediction to everyone we meet. And so I release this word into the law, into the creative mind that always says yes, that knows no limitations. I let it go and I let it be. And together we say, and so it is.